What's up, everybody? Welcome back or welcome to the channel. As always, I'm Hector the Pepper, and today we're just going to dive right into it. Today we're talking about torture. Now, there are two things, in my opinion, that us as human beings we've grown really good at doing. That is making more human beings and finding new and unique ways to kill each other. Now, we're just going to be talking about some old time periods. The first one starting with medieval times, all right? Now, with the huge religious movements during medieval times, it was not uncommon for the church to to torture people, torture and kill people, either one, to extract information, or two, just considering you a pagan and wiping you off the board. So one of the ways that they would do this is, for example, the brazen bull. Now, the brazen bull was a life-size bronze bull, literally looked like a bull. And what they would do is they would stuff the victim inside, and then the torturers would light a fire underneath the bull, and it would cook the person alive inside. Now, if that's not bad enough, the brazen bull was designed with an acoustic system. So this acoustic system, as the people inside were screaming, it would project their screams through this bull, out of the bull, and it would make the sound of a bull like rearing up and, going crazy. So just a real pieces of trash. You know what I mean? Just bad people, just lighting people on fire. You're just cooking slow, depending on how strong the fire was, right? So just horrible, gross, all for information, or for, like I said, being a pagan, right? The next one is the rack. All right. Now we're going to be talking about some people the community is still actually around. It's just, the atrocities from the historical time periods kind of faded away, and they're more like fun, looking people, I guess. But it's the rack. Now, majority of you, if you know anything about any type of torture, have heard of the rack. All right. So the rack was a torture device that was used at the Tower of London. And this started around the 15th century, and these people called the yeomen, however you want to say it, warders, they worked in the tower, and what they did was they created a rack that was attached to like pulleys and ropes, and essentially they could pull on these ropes that were attached to a victim's wrists and ankles and kind of like pull them apart. It would just, you're out here, you've probably seen it, and they're doing this, and it gets rough, right? And it would 99% of the time, depending on how far they went with it, would dislocate your joints. So you're just no joints. You're just walking around. And one of the most famous victims was the English writer and Protestant preacher Annie Askew. Annie Askew. Annie Askew. What a oddly normal name for that time, I feel like. But it's recorded that in 1546, the warders tortured her, and they placed her on the rack. And again, to gain information, it was for her to name other Protestant sympathizers. And she refused. She stayed 10 toes. She was like, nah, like, I'm not about that mess. These are my homies. I'm not giving them up. So they burned her at the stake. But because they used the rack on her, it had dislocated all of her joints, so she couldn't walk. So they had to carry her to the stake and then set her on fire. Like, I couldn't imagine. I could not imagine not being able to move any like part of any of my limbs, and then being carried probably slowly. I don't think they were probably rushing it. Like, and they carry it in place. Like you're like a Stephen Hawking, you know what I mean? Like, help me, and they just tie you up and set you on fire. Like, just horrible. Now, this next one, it's called the Scavenger's Daughter. I'm gonna say that again for you: the Scavenger's Daughter. All right, and this torture method was used around the 16th and 17th centuries. And again, the human warders at the Tower of London, they used this device called the Scavenger's Daughter, and it was a metal frame that compressed a victim's body, basically folding it in on itself. And again, a lot of times you would die, and it's been recorded that, blood would come out of several orifices of the body because you're being scrunched up so much. You're being squished. You're almost in like a weird trash compactor, but the trash compactor is your own body. And the blood would come out of the ears, eyes, nose, you would just, until eventually you would just die. Like, these guys went crazy with it. They were about their torture. They just went nuts with it. They were like, tell us where the Protestant people are. You know what I mean? You pagan, you could have just stabbed me with a sword, bro. Like, you're going to fold me in over myself. You're crazy. Like, fuck you, bro. Jesus. Now, this one really kind of bothers me, okay? Because I personally think that I could probably take a lot of forms of torture to an extent, right? Maybe not on this caliber, but like, don't mess with my feet. Now, they're not messing with the feet here, but I'm telling you right now, you put me in a chair, you're punching me, you're burning me, you're breaking my fingers and stuff. I'm not telling you nothing. I'm not telling you anything. But you pull out my toes, you pop those little foot fingies out of my shoe, and you grab onto that big toe like you're about to snap it in half, I'm going to tell you whatever you want. Which leads me to the next torture, which is the thumb screw. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's literally a metal plate that they'd put your fingers or thumbs or whatever through, and they would just tighten it down. Just turning it until ultimately it would crush your thumbs. Or whatever. It was designed to inflict pain, again, for confessions. We're on this theme of confessions. Tell me, Now, the next one, we're not talking about the band. It's the Iron Maiden. So the Iron Maiden was a stand-up coffin. And essentially it had, or not essentially, it did. It had spikes on the inside. And what they would do is they would put the victim inside there. Now, if you were large, which I'd imagine you probably weren't at the time, but if you were too large, the spikes had the potential to kind of just, impale you a little bit. You could just die from that. But the ultimate purpose of it was to put you in a position where you were just always very uncomfortable. And no matter which way you leaned or stood, the spikes would either cut or stab you. Because not many people, if any, can sleep while standing. They would keep you in there for a long time. Now, the Iron Maiden is highly speculated during medieval times. It is kind of rumored to be a myth during that time period. And because the only time that it really shows up, actually in history is not until the 1800s. But they do talk about it in medieval times as far as a form of punishment / torture. Right now, we're going to fast forward a little bit. We're going to go to Egypt. All right. Now, Egypt, of all of the things that they're known for, they were particularly known for torture. And just, again, confessions, punishment. They were about it. If it was a means for you to be put on display as a person who's hey, you messed up, then they were about it. Now, one of the most common things that they do is just beatings. They would just beat you. Now, they would tie you up and just flog you 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, sometimes 200 times. Now, depending on the severity of your crime, it could have also been accompanied by open wounds. So they'd split you open and then beat you. Did this result in death? Yeah, sometimes. Was it most likely that you would live? Again, depending on the person. It just depends on what type of person you are and how much of a beating your body overall can take and live. But I'm gonna let you know right now, I'm taking maybe 2-3 hits, I'm blacking out. That's another thing. I don't know. If they blacked out, I don't know if they just waited for him to wake up and then continued. Maybe blacking out was less of a punishment. You know what I mean? They were hey, let him wake up. Let him get up. Let him get up. But then we got into some more severe forms of punishment. And that was mutilation. So again, depending on your crime or depending on what it was, they'd do stuff like just cut off your nose. They cut off your nose, cut off your ears. And then very common, if you were a thief, they'd cut off your hand or hands, depending on, again, the severity of your crime. So the Egyptians were about the torture life. They just, I have no doubt they had torture squads. They were just out here torturing motherfuckers. Just like if they thought you did bad, you were kaput. Now this one, I would not wish on anybody. Impalement. I feel so bad for these people. So they would essentially take a wooden spike and take the victim and keister it on them. Boom, just split them up the middle. All right. Now there are like hieroglyphics that exist depicting a body like on the stake. And there's a phrase that was written on one of these hieroglyphics that says to give on the wood. Just absolutely gross. Give on the wood. Yeah, you gave your butthole. Like that's what you gave. You gave your small intestine, large intestine, all the way up to your lungs, liver, kidney, heart, like everything like that, up potentially like out, just gross. Like, and you give them this, like, could you imagine you're about to be like sentenced? You got Pharaoh, whoever, he's about to sentence you and you're like, oh, please, flogging, please. And they're like, give him the stake. Give him the stake. Like, I impale him. Like, no. Wait, no. So, and then obviously they did the gimme punishments, the gimme tortures, the gimme, executions, the burning, the drownings, the beheadings. They'd feed you to crocodiles sometimes too. They just throw you in the crocodile waters and you'd get eaten up. They just keep these motherfuckers hungry and just eat you up. Or they would use a scorpion pit. Now, this one sounds like a bad scene from Holes, but instead of the yellow spotted lizards, we got scorpions. And they'd throw you into a scorpion pit, and just like it sounds, scorpions would end up stinging you, and you would just ultimately die from the venom. Like, I don't know how many scorpions you think you could fight off for how long. I would like to think that I could fight off at least a couple, like at least 100, but eventually they're going to fall on you. They're going to sting you. They're going to kill you. You're going to die a slow, horrible death. So thanks, Egypt. Thanks for those wonderful forms of torture. I really appreciate it. How we moved so far ahead in the world. And the last one that we're going to be discussing today is Japan. Feudal Japan, to be more specific. Now, these guys were kind of interesting in the way that they kind of did some of their stuff. So one was boiling to death. No, these guys weren't witches. They weren't cooking kids for, different keep me young youth rituals and stuff like that. They would just boil a big pot of water and put you in there. You just burn up. You just cook. You just be, they cooked you like pasta, and you get all gross. And now this one was reserved for more like extreme offenses, but still, we cooked people. Us as humans have cooked people several times in history, whether from a bull to a pot. Like it's all the same. It's so horrible. Like, and it's crazy to think that somebody sat around and was like eating some like ramen one day, and they're like, man, this ramen's good. It's hot. Whew, burned my mouth. What if we put people in this? What? How cool would that be? But only for extreme cases. But again, it's all perspective, because my idea of an extreme case might be different from, the Japanese leaders' idea of a extreme offense. I really hope they just weren't just cooking motherfuckers left and right. But we continue. And again, we bring this back. It's a trend, burning at the stake, burning in Egypt, but we also have execution by burning. All right. Now, again, most likely at the stake. That's how it's kind of recorded, is at the stake. I'm sure they did it other times, but they reserved this punishment for like arsonists. So I don't know how many arsonists were running around, but I guess it's like an eye for an eye kind of thing. Like you burn down something, so we're going to burn you. So it makes it right. You know, now the world is balanced. We are yin, we are zen. Please don't fry me. That might be a Chinese thing, not a Japanese thing, but now everything is aligned, right? Then you have crucifixion. All right. It didn't just happen to Jesus, ladies and gentlemen. It happened to Asian people as well by Asian people. And this was used for crimes like, and this is how, during the research I found this, how it was written, for killing a parent or husband. So no real mention of like killing your wife, just a parent or husband. You'd be crucified. So everybody would see like you hanging there and they're like, look at what this person has done, you know, and you'd just be nailed to, you know, the cross kind of thing. And then this one I really can't pronounce. I'm going to try. Anna Cherushi, I don't know. But victims, including Christians, during periods of persecution were hung upside down in pits. And sometimes those pits were filled with excrement, doo-doo. And they would cut them like on the forehead to relieve pressure. They would ultimately just die by poo-poo. Like they just a pit of shit. Like, and this again was primarily for like Christians, because Christians did make their way over to Japan to spread the word of God. And obviously Japan was not a fan at the time. So if you were found to be a Christian foreigner, especially a Christian foreigner, you were executed. And then you had a water crucifixion, which is tying victims to a post and placing them by the seashore at low tide, waiting for high tide, and they would drown. So thanks Japan. That was great. Medieval times, Egyptian times, and feudal Japan times. Horrible times. It didn't get better through the history until it got better, right? Like we can't just run around and tie people to posts and, you know, beat them to death anymore, right? Now we just lock you up forever. And which some would say is also a form of punishment, or not punishment. I mean, I guess it is, but a form of torture. But we try to make sure through a legal system that the punishment fits the crime. Back then, it was just the highest guy was like, nah, this guy, give him the stake, impale him. Again, I'm stuck on that because that would be the worst thing. I'd be like anything else. Set me on fire. I feel like being set on fire would be better. I mean, it'd be slower, I guess, maybe, but imagine dangling over this spike, and they're just like, what if they like fucked with you? They're like, 1, 2, like you thought I was gonna do it, you know, the whole time you're just like crying, you're shitting and pissing yourself, and they're like, you know, they did that. There's no way they just put them up there and just dropped them. They were like, ready, or like, what if you were like on your side and then they like rammed you with it and then they stood you up? Oh, worst chicken on a stick I've ever had. Ugh. But yeah, I hope you guys learned a little bit about torture and realized that we got it pretty good now. As always, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe. It really helps. And as always, be safe. Peace.